A year ago, if someone had told me that I would be running a half marathon, I would have laughed. In fact, 10 years ago, I would have died laughing. Yet here I am, running towards the finish line of my first half marathon, completely pain-free. How did I turn my life around? Well, today I'm going to share with you the lessons that I've learned. So for those of you who are new here, I've been making videos for a while, but in 2020 I was diagnosed with chronic pelvic pain syndrome, and it was a crippling situation for me. I was in agony. I could barely move off the sofa for weeks on end, and I remember lying there thinking to myself, I just wish that I could be normal again. I wish I could be a normal human being. I wish I could experience what normal people experience, be able to train and live my life. Now you fast forward today, and I'm going to share some of the biggest lessons that I've learned using functional patterns to help me run a half marathon pain-free, but how these lessons can help you. And I'd like to mention that today's video and the revenue from today's video is going to go towards a Brains Trust tumour charity who've been very helpful in helping my sister over the last year, but more on that later. I've never really been a runner. Like, this is a picture of me coming last in a 100-meter race at school in 1996. And it was never a strong point of mine. I battled with cross country. I was always having to run and just hated it. And my friends used to tell me, like, just focus on the few steps in front of you. Don't worry about it. Just go for it. But I really didn't like it. And then, we fast forward through my life and end up in 2013. I was in the worst shape of my life and I had to do something, otherwise I was probably going to die. So I got my life back on track and lost loads of weight, started training again, started developing a better relationship with exercise again, and in the process retrained to be a personal trainer. And that was when I kind of discovered functional patterns. I'd been out online, I'd been looking around for everything. I'd got my personal training diploma, but it kind of felt like I was a driver again, like on the roads, like a new driver. I had this license, but I didn't really have the experience behind me to feel confident. So I started researching training methods. I started researching what was out there, and functional patterns kept popping up. And as I developed my own coaching career, I used bits of their information and I found other coaches to borrow ideas off, I guess, and develop my own program with clients, because what I noticed was that people were coming in with pain and they wanted to train, and they were kind of pushing themselves in the gym as clients of mine in pain without really understanding that you should be able to train pain-free, and pain is not a normal part of life. And so what I ended up doing was developing a 12-step program to help people get ready for training. And I used that for several years and people got great results with it. It was really, really helpful for lower back pain. It was really helpful for mobility. But I got to a point where something wasn't quite right. And I was using my own training plans to train myself. And one day in the gym, I was doing a heavy leg session, and then bang, the wheels came off. That evening, I felt horrendous. I had all this chronic pain, and I just felt like there was something missing in my training. There was something missing in my understanding of things. And, unfortunately, I tried doctors, meditation, physiotherapy, prescription pills, high-strength cannabis oil. Nothing worked for a long-term solution or even a short to medium-term solution. I was just struggling. And I decided to take my laptop out one day and just go back to functional patterns and start looking at what they were doing. And it turned out that they had a 10-week course, and it was, pain-free, all this kind of stuff. And I thought, well, my posture is something I've never addressed. So let's dive into this course because I'm not getting answers anywhere else. And that's when I started making videos on YouTube. And I just started looking at my body as a system. And I started looking at my body from the perspective of a postural aspect, wondering if there was some relationship between my biomechanics and the pain and the struggles that I was having. And so with that process, I started stripping everything back, a bit like buying an old car and trying to do it up and get it back to a really well-oiled machine. I had to strip back everything. I had to learn how to walk again. I had to learn what movement meant again, what kind of movements I was doing, and what kind of movements I was doing relative to my frame as a human being, because it's not something people think about. People don't think about how their genetic makeup and their biological predisposition to movement has influenced the situation that they're in right now. Amongst all of this, I had breakthroughs, slowly came. There was no linear path to this, by the way. But last year in 2023, I really had a lot of breakthroughs. I had a lot of understanding in my body. My wife was doing several half marathons in the lead up to some training for a marathon in Manchester in the UK. You know, what struck me about the whole process was a couple of things. The first thing is how many people were doing this stuff and just living their best life. And the other thing was how many people were doing these marathons and just so badly prepared for it. So badly prepared for races that they were ending up hurt or sometimes going into hospital straight after the race or even during the race. And that happened this half marathon, don't get me wrong. But I was like, well, if these people can do it, why can't I do that? You know, if I used to look around at people who were thin and had all this energy when I was overweight, and I was like, if they can do that, I can surely do that. And so diving into functional patterns, I started to really nail down three kind of things. And the main thing for the marathon prep and the half marathon prep was I needed to find something that was going to be very simple, that I could stick to. And in January of this year, 2024, I decided, right, I'm going to stick to 3 movements that I know that are really good corrective exercises that I can use from functional patterns. And with those movements, I'm going to just try and do them every single day for 30 days. And 30 minutes a day, spend time on my body. And once I started getting into a groove of it, I started to really understand how my body was working, you know, sort of developing all these ideas that I'd been working with a practitioner on. And it really started, everything just started to land and make sense. And I guess it's why university degrees take like 4 or 5 years, is because by the time you get through the 5 years, which is essentially how long I was doing FP for, 4 years, you get to the point where you become a bit of an expert in what you're doing. You know what you're doing. You kind of understand things a lot better than you did on day one. And that puts you in a much stronger position if you're willing to apply yourself. And that was it, really. I just put myself through a 30-minute session every single day. And I did that all the way through. And about 15 weeks out from my running event, I was like, man, I've really got to put in some miles now, because you know, I've got 15 weeks to prepare. I've been running a couple of times a week and I've been doing mostly light work on the treadmill. I need to put some effort in here. So I bought a program from a company called 80/20 Endurance. And what was really scary for me at the time was that it was running 5 times a week. I wasn't sure if I could do that. I wasn't sure if my body would respond to that training load. And what I found, having done functional patterns and having worked through the 10-week course and worked with a practitioner, I found that my body just adapted really well to the training. I got to week 13 in the plan and I actually made a video talking about how amazing I felt. But then the wheels came off a little bit. And not because I ended up back in chronic pain, but just the fact that my legs felt so heavy. And on week 13, you're at your peak of your training. It's the highest and the hardest week that you have. It's the most number of miles that you're going to do under your legs. And I just felt pooped. I felt so tired. And I've emailed the guy from the training plan and I was like, dude, I need to chill, man. Can I taper off? Can I just stop and just taper and not worry about running anymore until the marathon? And he was like, no, just stick with the plan. You've got this. It'll be fine. Just dial it back. You know, you'll be okay. And for the next 2 weeks, you're going to gently taper. But if you stick to the taper, you'll be absolutely fine. And for that last 2 weeks, I was just skeptical. I was like, something's going to go wrong. I'm not sure my body can cope with this. And lo and behold, on race day, I was still feeling nervous. I've done all the prep. I've done all the running. I've not ended up in pain. I've got no injuries. My body is just, my legs are tired. Now it's the psychological battle. And I was so unprepared for it. I was mentally just unprepared for this battle of, like there's a difference between training and then actually doing an event. I'd put so much emphasis on the actual training element and being worried and concerned about being able to commit to that level of training. I hadn't even thought about how to execute on the day. And so I kind of felt like a student of like last minute exam cramming the night before, trying to think like, how am I going to run this race? The reason I had that feeling and mainly was because I really wanted to push for sub 2 hours in the half marathon. I wanted it to be like this thing where I not only did I do my first half marathon and I did it pain free, and I didn't get injured and I survived and all this kind of stuff, but I did it in sub 2 hours. And it's a hard half marathon to run. It's quite a hilly route. The night before I was like, right, I'm just going to show up. I'm going to do my best and forget the rest. And sure enough, I did that. I didn't hit the sub 2 hour mark. It was 2 hours, 1 minute and 44 seconds. When I crossed the finish line, it was sort of like, it was quite surreal, really. There were mixed emotions. I was angry. I was happy. I was content. But the most thing, I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised that I did it. And the reason is because I feel like I just kind of stuck to a plan and it worked. The plan at the beginning, if I look back to like a year ago today, I was standing in a coffee shop waiting for my wife to finish this race in pain. And I was like, as I entered the race, I was like, I entered it a year in advance, right? Because I was like, I need to set a deadline for myself. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm actually going to be able to do this, but I'm going to put it in my mind and I'm going to focus on that being the outcome. And then I'm going to work my way back from there. Like, what do I need to do to get from this point in the future back to today? And how can I plot my route? And it came down to just keeping it simple and taking the time to put the reps in and focus on the controllable elements of the plans. And overall, from chronic pain and obesity to running a half marathon, it's not so much changed my perspective of what's possible, but what it has done is it's made me realize that actually being quite normal is a great feeling. And what I mean by that is my results were fairly average. I didn't really fit into the top elite category, nor did I fit at the bottom end of the spectrum. I was somewhere sort of shoved in the middle of a whole bunch of people that are actually running these races, whether they run them consistently or not. But there's a good 1,000 or so people, my category, that were running this event. And so I got to look at that and go, actually, I'm like slap bang in the middle, happy days. Like, why would I want to be anything better than that right now? Maybe in the future I can be. And it made me realize that actually, I got what I wanted. What I wanted lying on that sofa was to be normal, to be kind of average, I guess. And yeah, you could argue that training for a half marathon is not an average person thing to do. But then you have people running 100-mile races at the moment. You have this big push in the industry for harder, better, faster, guys running the whole length of Africa to prove something to the world that their body is capable of these things. And when a large part of the population just wants to show up each day and be pain-free, people need to hear more stories, in fact, like mine, I think, where there's a bit more dose of reality and people aren't so superhuman and they aren't drugged up to the nines performing in these elite sports, but they're just average people doing sort of above average things. I think to kind of wrap things up for this, firstly, functional patterns has made a huge difference in my life. All I can say is if you're willing to put the time in, you're willing to learn, you're willing to, get some reps done, you will see success. And for those of you out there who are struggling with chronic pain, just understand that it is possible to recover. There is levels to this. I'm not saying it's going to be a smooth road. I'm not going to say it's going to be tomorrow. But so long as you never give up hope, you will make something happen for yourself. And that sometimes comes in the way of asking for help. It sometimes comes by doing things that people might make fun of you for. Like if I look in the comment section of some of my videos, there's some hurtful stuff, right? There's some people who think they know better, and that's fine. But nobody knows better than you in your current situation. And if you believe that you've got something in you that says you deserve better, then you probably do. So with that said, guys, I'd like to hear from you in the comments, like what journeys you've had, what pain systems have you used? What journeys have you had to come out of things like this? And what journeys are you in currently at the moment that you need help with? And more importantly, just remember that there are amazing things that happen every day. And speaking of amazing things, and if you're still here, thank you very much. My sister was diagnosed with a brain tumor a year ago, just over a year ago now. And at the time when it all happened, I really didn't know if I would ever see her again that day when it happened, when she went into hospital with a seizure. And she has had some incredible help from an amazing team of people within the NHS, outside of the NHS here in the UK, and the team outside of the NHS has been called Brains Trust, and they have done a fantastic thing as a charity. They are supporting so many people with brain tumors and so many people going through such rough times in their lives, and so many people probably sitting there on their sofas going, I just want to be average. I just want to be normal again. If there's anything you could take from this video, is to take some time to research them, to have a look at them down in the comment section below. And if you've got some money spare, pop some money in their bank account and give them some help, because they are currently helping thousands and thousands of people across the UK with brain tumors have a better quality of life. And that's all we can really wish for in this world. Stay strong and keep moving.